Her daughter-in-law called her a bioweapon of guilt, right into a baby monitor Doris bought. No one knew she heard it. No one saw her pause mid-fold with Max's sock in her hand. By Monday, Melissa's name was stripped from the trust and locked out of every account. Doris didn't argue. She didn't cry. She let the paperwork speak while Melissa filmed her next kitchen reel, because Doris hadn't just co-signed a mortgage. She'd co-signed her silence, and now she was revoking both. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The baby monitor was still on. That's how Doris heard it. Not by snooping, not by mistake, just standing in the nursery, folding Max's tiny socks, while the soft crackle of the monitor filtered in voices from the brand new quartz and gold-trimmed kitchen downstairs. Melissa's voice rang out first, light, laughing. A performance for the housewarming crowd. Don't get me wrong, I love her, but she's not a grandmother. She's like a bioweapon of guilt in cardigans. Laughter followed. Not the polite kind. The real kind. The kind that stung. Doris froze mid-fold. Her thumb pressed into the seam of a sock she suddenly couldn't see clearly. Her heart didn't race. It stilled, the way it used to when she'd catch a student cheating in her classroom. Not from shock, but from recognition. I mean, Melissa continued, she's always just there, quiet like a shadow, judging everything, acting like she still owns the place. Another laugh. God bless her, but some people confuse presence with ownership. Doris inhaled sharply, the stale scent of lavender baby powder suddenly too sweet, too fake. She placed the socks into the drawer with care, adjusted Max's blanket in the crib out of reflex, and walked out of the nursery as if nothing had happened, as if her daughter-in-law hadn't just peeled her identity off like old wallpaper. Downstairs, the smell of fresh-baked quiche and mimosas filled the air. Doris passed the mirror in the hall and offered herself the gentlest of smiles, the kind teacher's master, calm, unbothered, untouchable. No one stopped her as she walked out the back door and into the yard. She sat on the edge of the raised garden bed she helped build when Jason and Melissa bought the lot. There were still dirt stains under her nails from planting the lemon balm that now filled the corner with a lemony bite against the Oregon air. Jason had asked her to invest in this house. Just to help get us started, he'd said. Co-sign the mortgage so we get the interest rate. You'll always have a suite, a place with Max. We'll design it together. Instead, the suite became a guest room, then it became a storage space. Now she had a recliner in the laundry nook, tucked between the utility sink and the downstairs half-bath. She's not a grandmother. Bioweapon of guilt. Doris blinked the words away like ash. Later that evening, after the guests had left and Melissa was busy editing her party footage for TikTok, Doris pulled out the cherrywood box from beneath her bed. She hadn't touched it in years. It still smelled faintly of cedar and old ink. Inside, between pension paperwork and her late husband's military documents, was the original trust agreement. Her name, clean and permanent, sat on the co-ownership line for the house. Silent financial partner, it read, with full authority to restrict or revoke access under just cause. A clause she'd forgotten, until now. She traced her late husband's signature on the witness line, strong, deliberate, still protecting her even now. Don't ever let them erase you, he had told her once when she hesitated to ask for a title on the last home they bought together. Your kindness is a gift, but don't let it make you invisible. Doris pressed her palm flat over the paper. Invisible? Not anymore. The next morning, Melissa uploaded a TikTok with a house tour overlaid by a trending pop track. Doris stood just off-screen in the video, barely visible in the reflection of the oven glass. Silent, upright, forgotten. The caption read, "Some people confuse presence with ownership. Dar dream kitchen, dar in-laws, belike, dar manifesting mine." Doris stared at the boxes stacked against the walls of what used to be the guest suite, her suite. One labeled Melissa's Winter Wardrobe, another, Holiday Decor, Master Bath Only. The room smelled faintly of jasmine and cardboard. Her quilt was gone, her books, packed into an old wine crate, and the armchair where she once read Max to sleep now held a folded Pilates mat. She pressed her lips together and backed out quietly, tugging the door shut like she was tucking in a secret. That night, she slept downstairs, again, in the faded blue recliner tucked between the washer and dryer. The hum of the dryer rattled through her spine, a low rumble beneath the symphony of distant laughter coming from the living room above, a suite of her own. That was the promise. A year ago, Doris sold her rental duplex, the one her late husband and she spent a decade maintaining, to help Jason and Melissa qualify for this home. It wasn't an act of obligation, it was love, the kind of love that believed in new generations, in shared growth, in giving a head start. "I want you to have roots," Doris had said, sitting across from Jason in her old kitchen, the check for the down payment folded neatly in her purse. "Not just drywall and debt." Melissa had nodded earnestly, touching her hand. "We'll build something beautiful. You'll have a wing all your own." Back then, she'd believed it. The interest rate dropped with Doris's name co-signed on the mortgage. Her retirement nest egg dissolved into granite counters and double sinks. She didn't mind. At least, she hadn't. Now her wing was a laundry corner, and her name was never mentioned on house tours. It was the wallpaper that broke something. Doris walked past the nursery mid-morning, catching a glimpse through the cracked door. Melissa stood on a stepladder, smoothing floral paper onto the far wall. Creamy petals with gold accents that shimmered when they caught the light. "Don't let it wrinkle," Melissa snapped at Jason. "This is high-end, not a school project." Max sat on the floor chewing a stuffed giraffe. Doris knelt beside him. "He loves that toy," she said gently. "Got it at that little bookstore near the ferry." Melissa didn't respond. Jason glanced at her, then looked away. Doris rose and returned to the recliner, her knees aching in protest. She sat down slowly, the leather groaning, and noticed a rolled-up poster sticking halfway out of the trash bin beside her. She pulled it out. A vision board. Melissa's, no doubt. Photos cut from glossy magazines. A yacht. A luxury stroller. A woman practicing yoga on a marble patio. At the bottom, written in metallic marker, "Full house ownership checkmark. No strings, no guest rooms, just ours. Manifested, clean slate." The word ours was underlined, twice. Doris stared at it, her fingers tightening around the paper until it crumpled. She thought of the duplex she'd sold, of the late nights scrubbing walls between tenants, her husband sanding cabinets while Doris painted baseboards with a toothbrush. They'd built that little property into something real, tangible, valuable, and she'd handed it over to help them. Now she was a string, a guest, a shadow in someone else's fantasy of independence. That evening, while Melissa filmed a kitchen reel about small space hosting, Doris sat at the local coffee shop with her laptop open, the smell of espresso and cinnamon rolls wafting around her. The screen glowed with the confirmation page. Appointment booked, Jensen and Ward Estate Law, Thursday, 10 a.m. She didn't tell Jason. She didn't tell anyone. She closed the laptop and took a long sip of her tea, the steam curling up like a quiet promise. Next day, the erasure didn't come with shouting. It came in skips and silence. A name left off a group text. A lunch that never included an extra plate. A calendar update that somehow never made its way to Doris's inbox. At first, Doris thought she'd simply missed it. A pediatric appointment here. A community baby yoga class there. But then came the photo, posted to Melissa's social media. The caption, sugar-slicked, 3 generations of love, da family first. Doris wasn't in the photo. It was just Melissa, her mother, and baby Max, all pastel cardigans and curated lighting. A comment from someone said, "Where's Jason's mom?" Melissa replied with a sparkle emoji and a shrug gif. Subtle, deliberate. Doris didn't respond. She just saved a screenshot in a password-protected folder labeled Echoes. The neighborhood block party came next. Doris saw the banner while walking Oscar past the community garden. Spring splash on Sycamore, all invited. Music echoed from down the street that evening, kids running through bubble machines while parents sipped drinks out of mason jars. She'd baked a peach cobbler just in case, but it cooled untouched in the kitchen. From her upstairs window, she watched Melissa laugh in the cul-de-sac, holding Max in one arm and a solo cup in the other. Jason was there too, nodding as Melissa talked to someone from the HOA. Doris stood behind the curtain, unseen, cobbler cooling like regret. A few days later, Max tugged at Doris's hand while they read Goodnight Moon for the 4th time. "Grandma," he whispered, blinking up at her, "why don't you sleep here anymore? Mommy said this isn't your real home." Doris's throat tightened. She tucked a blanket around him and smoothed his hair, kissing the top of his head. "Grandma's home is wherever you are, sweetheart." He nodded sleepily, but something in his eyes told her he wasn't quite convinced. The rumors spread in quiet corners. She wasn't invited to Melissa's mother's birthday brunch, and no one offered an explanation. But Doris knew. She'd seen the way neighbors hesitated in conversation lately, how they avoided eye contact or smiled a little too tightly. She pieced it together slowly, like a jigsaw with missing edges. She forgets things now. Melissa told a neighbor one day at the mailbox. "We're just trying to protect her dignity." "I had to take over scheduling," she told another. "She gets overwhelmed." And then more pointed, "We're just trying to make sure Max grows up around stable influences." Doris logged the statements in her notebook. Date, time, wording. She wasn't documenting spite, she was building a timeline. Still, Jason said nothing. When Doris gently mentioned she'd love to join Max at his music class sometime, Jason rubbed the back of his neck and said, "Let's check with Melissa. She's been really focused on keeping things streamlined." "Streamlined," Doris repeated. He didn't meet her eyes. That night, after tucking Max in and pretending not to hear Melissa's sigh of relief when she said goodnight, Doris stepped out to the back patio to water her herbs. The chives had browned, the basil wilted from too much sun. From inside the open window, she heard Melissa's voice, light, breathy, like she was joking. "I give it 6 more months before we own everything." A pause, a second voice, her friend Holly's, sharp with amusement. "She doesn't suspect anything?" Melissa snorted. "She still thinks being here is some kind of favor to us. I mean, the woman sleeps next to dryer sheets." They laughed. Doris set the watering can down with care. Her hands trembled slightly, not from rage, but from recognition. She wasn't being forgotten. She was being phased out. The law office didn't smell like a trap being set. It smelled like lemon oil, fresh paper, and calm judgment. Doris sat across from Marlene Kim, her estate attorney for nearly 12 years. The woman's steel-rimmed glasses caught the overhead light, and her pen tapped softly on a legal pad. "She called you what again?" Marlene asked, though her tone held no curiosity, only calculation. "A bioweapon of guilt." Doris's voice didn't waver. "Then she joked about me fading mentally, said I'd be out of the picture in 6 months. Jason didn't correct her." Marlene nodded once. "That's enough to trigger Clause 14b. Disparagement of benefactor resulting in undue influence or reputational harm. It was put in the trust when your husband added protections, remember?" "I remember," Doris said quietly. Her late husband had insisted on adding that clause the same week they co-signed Jason and Melissa's mortgage, just in case anyone ever gets too comfortable. Marlene leaned forward. "Do you want to revoke full access now?" Number, "Not yet." Doris paused. "I want to suspend her access, quietly. Let Jason sweat a little but not panic. And I want a third-party administrator, not me, not family, someone neutral. I can move oversight to Bennett fiduciaries in Portland. They'll flag transactions and hold disbursements pending approval, discreet but enforceable." "Perfect. And Melissa won't know?" "Not until her card gets declined," Doris replied, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Back home that evening, Doris placed the new trust documents in a fireproof folder in her bedroom closet, right behind the tax return from the year she retired. Downstairs, Melissa was holding court in the dining room. "I'm getting the teak set with the built-in cooler drawer," she said, holding her phone up to Jason's face. "It's not that expensive, and we deserve a nice outdoor space before summer." Jason looked half-interested, rubbing Max's back absent-mindedly. "That's a lot," he muttered. Doris took her seat at the table, setting down the glass bowl of cucumber salad. Melissa didn't look at her when she said, "Hope this is vinegar-free. My gut can't handle cheap dressings anymore." Doris smiled, spooning herself a serving without responding. Marlene's words echoed in her mind. Keep your physical presence calm. The law doesn't speak through tantrums. She listened as Melissa went on about luxury pergolas, brand partnerships, and a friend's husband who'd completely handed over the finances, which is the dream. Every sentence was its own blade, but Doris had stopped bleeding. The first crack arrived the next morning. Melissa's voice traveled through the kitchen like a siren, pitched just below shriek level. "What the hell? Why is the payment declined? This is ridiculous." Doris stirred her coffee slowly, watching the steam curl above the rim. Jason entered the kitchen, holding his phone. "The account says pending review," he said cautiously. "Could be fraud protection or a flag." "Fraud? I've used that card 6 times this week." "Exactly," Doris murmured under her breath. Melissa stormed out of the room, phone to her ear, muttering, "Useless bank," and "Escalate this now." Jason lingered at the table, glancing once at Doris. "Mom, did you notice anything weird with the accounts?" he asked. She looked at him with measured stillness. "No. But I imagine the bank's just being cautious. You know how sensitive things can get when too many luxury items go through at once." Jason didn't press further. Maybe he didn't want to know. Maybe he already did. Doris sipped her coffee. The bitterness tasted like control reclaimed. The day the contractor quit, Melissa was in the middle of filming a kitchen glow-up story for her Instagram followers. She had one foot propped on a paint-streaked stool, showing off her new matte black cabinet pulls when her phone rang. "Hey, Colin," she answered brightly, flipping the camera to selfie mode. "The samples are here. Wait till you see the—" She stopped cold. Her smile flattened. Her free hand dropped. "What do you mean, canceled? We signed the—" "No, I know the deposit cleared. I saw the confirmation email." Jason was in the living room, bouncing Max on his knee. Doris was at the breakfast bar, flipping through a seed catalog, seemingly uninterested, but her eyes lifted calmly. Melissa's voice rose. "What do you mean, client no longer verified?" "Verified by who?" Jason stood slowly, setting Max down with a soft, "Hang on, buddy." He looked toward the kitchen. Melissa ended the call with a furious tap, her cheeks pink and splotchy. "They pulled the build," she snapped, "refusing to finish unless I pay in full up front. Which I can't, because, guess what, my cards are still locked." Doris flipped another page. Jason turned to her. "Mom, is this from you?" Doris looked up. Her voice was steady but soft. "I simply requested the trust be enforced as originally intended." "What does that mean?" "It means Melissa violated the terms of her access, multiple times, publicly." Jason blinked. What violations?" Doris rose, walked to the drawer beneath the microwave, and pulled out a thin manila folder. She slid it across the island. Her movements were precise, not angry. Inside, printed screenshots, transcribed quotes, a copy of the original trust agreement with Clause 14B highlighted in yellow. Jason scanned the pages, each word pushing the color from his face. Melissa leaned over his shoulder, reading. Her voice dripped acid. "This is pathetic. You're policing jokes now? That's what this is? Some geriatric revenge play because I called you, what, a guilt grenade?" Doris didn't flinch. It's not about what you called me. It's about the intention behind it. You built a campaign of humiliation, then expected my money to keep pouring through the walls." Melissa snorted. "This was our house." "No," Doris said, stepping forward, her voice a notch colder. "This was my investment. I helped build this house from blueprints and bank wires. I didn't sign up to be erased." Jason looked between them, torn and hollow. "You really froze everything?" Doris nodded once. "Temporarily. She still has access to non-restricted funds, her influencer income, her personal accounts. She'll just need to live within those means now." Melissa let out a laugh, loud, sharp, unhinged. "You're going to make me cancel the baby shower catering? You're going to humiliate me over some outdated rule from a dusty contract?" Jason turned to her slowly. "Wait, did the shower payments bounce too?" Melissa's silence answered for her. Jason raked a hand through his hair. "Jesus, Melissa! "Oh, don't Jesus, Melissa me," she snapped. "Your mom's been plotting this for weeks, playing the sweet grandma while setting traps. This is a betrayal." "No," Doris replied. "This is a boundary." Melissa's mouth opened, ready to fire back, but the sound never came. She spun on her heel and stormed upstairs. A moment later, the bedroom door slammed, vibrating through the ceiling. Jason stood in place, breathing hard. Doris watched him, remembering the soft-spoken boy who once defended a classmate from bullies in the 4th grade, and now stood frozen between a mother he couldn't protect and a wife he wouldn't confront. "I didn't want this," he finally said. "I just wanted peace." Doris looked at him gently. "Peace is never found in pretending not to see the damage." He sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't have to fix it," Doris said. "You just have to stop enabling it." Jason didn't respond. Upstairs, muffled yelling could be heard through the floor, Melissa's voice, manic and furious, likely with someone on the phone. Doris reached for her tea. She sipped, then turned to the mail stack on the counter. At the top sat an envelope with no return address. Inside, a scrap of paper. Typed. One sentence. "You won't survive this war." Doris didn't panic. She folded the paper carefully, slid it into a Ziploc bag, and placed it inside her fireproof lockbox. Then she brewed a cup of Earl Grey, fed Oscar, and took her time stirring honey into her tea. Before breakfast was over, she'd already scheduled a discreet installation with a local security company. By noon, a camera was quietly mounted above the garage, unblinking, motion-triggered, and cloud-linked to her phone. She didn't tell Jason. She didn't need to. The long game had begun. That evening, Doris pulled out her will for the first time in 2 years. The document smelled of old envelopes and lemon polish, like every sacred paper worth protecting. She flipped to the second page, where Melissa's name had once been listed under secondary beneficiaries. With calm precision, she struck it through. Then she amended a clause she'd considered quietly but never enacted. In the event of familial estrangement, legal or emotional, the following grandchild shall remain eligible for inheritance upon their 21st birthday. She wrote Max's full name, carefully underlining it. The clause was airtight, the language clear. Love would skip the undeserving middle. Her attorney would notarize it in the morning. That night, she set up her old iPad on a tripod in her bedroom. She smoothed her hair, buttoned her cardigan, and pressed record. "Journal Entry 1, she said into the lens, her voice crisp and firm. "My name is Doris Green. I am 71 years old. I am of sound mind and body. This video serves as ongoing evidence of mental clarity in the event of legal interference." She paused, then added, "I know who I am. I know what's being done to erase me. I do not consent to silence." She saved the file to a private drive with a password only her attorney knew. Every week going forward, she'd add another entry, reading headlines, recalling dates, solving puzzles, reviewing banking terms, one act at a time. Her story, preemptively protected. To the outside world, Doris remained unchanged. She still picked Max up from school on Tuesdays, still brought over fresh banana bread on Fridays, still chatted kindly with the barista at the local cafe, but underneath the softness, her mind was grid-mapping everything. She noticed the packages that arrived and were hidden before Jason got home, the late-night Venmo payments to unknown names, the way Melissa smoothed her voice into fake sweetness when brands messaged her online, then turned sharp the second she was off camera. Melissa thought no one was watching, but Doris saw it all. So did Jason, slowly. Reluctantly. One evening, while folding laundry, he found a receipt in Melissa's jeans pocket. $600 spent at a luxury skincare clinic in Portland. "I thought we agreed no big expenses this month," he said at dinner. Melissa barely looked up from her phone. It was comped. For content, Doris took a quiet bite of her salad. "You paid in full." The vendor emailed a receipt to the trust, flagged it. Jason froze. "Why is that connected to the trust at all?" Melissa's cheeks flushed. "She's lying." Doris placed her fork down gently. "Would you like me to forward the email, Jason?" Melissa pushed her chair back, muttering something about Doris being obsessed with control. Jason didn't argue this time. The next morning, Melissa's mood was jagged and mean. She slammed drawers, snapped at Max, and spilled oat milk across her marble counter while recording a day in my life video. By afternoon, her phone buzzed with a flood of notifications. Her brand manager had tagged her in a public comment. "This partnership is no longer aligned with our values. Effective immediately, we are terminating the campaign." Underneath, a clip from one of Melissa's deleted lives had resurfaced, her voice unmistakable. "My mother-in-law? She's a parasite in orthopedic shoes." The post had over 45,000 views. The next morning, Melissa stared at her screen, blinking rapidly as her follower count ticked downward like a stock crash in real time. Just that morning, she'd woken up to a DM from a longtime brand partner, casual athletic wear, with a polite but pointed message. "Given the growing discourse surrounding your online behavior, we'll be pausing all collaborations. Thank you for understanding." She didn't understand. Not at all. Her phone was vibrating every 10 seconds with alerts she didn't want, followers tagging each other under the resurfaced clip where she called Doris a parasite in orthopedic shoes and the ghost of boomer guilt. The silence from her sponsors was louder than any algorithmic noise she'd ever known. Across the neighborhood, the whispers began. It started with Heather from the HOA, who stopped Melissa on her walk. "I heard about the money situation," Heather said, not even bothering to sound curious. "Trusts are tricky things, especially when people forget who actually funded them." Melissa tried to smile. "It's just some internal restructuring. Doris is getting older and Heather held up a hand. "No need to explain. Just maybe take a break from posting for a while. People are noticing." At home, Melissa cornered Jason as he walked in with a box of diapers. "You need to do something." Jason blinked, tired. "Like what?" "You know what? You're on the mortgage too. You can call a lawyer. We'll challenge it. It's your mother, Jason. She's out of control." Jason set the box down slowly. "I've been reading through the paperwork." Melissa's mouth went dry. "I found the deed," he continued. "The real one. Not the framed copy you like to show off on TikTok." She stepped back. So it says Mom owns 49% of the property. You and I, 51% together, which means without my signature, your majority isn't worth anything." Her voice cracked. "She did that to control us." Jason shook his head. She did it to protect us, and we treated her like a burden." Melissa's eyes welled, but not from remorse. From fear. 3 days later, in Costco, it unraveled completely. They were in the checkout line, Melissa piling overpriced organic snacks onto the conveyor, when the clerk gently leaned in and said, "Your card's been declined." Melissa's voice pitched loud enough for 2 lanes over. "What? Try it again?" The clerk did. Same result. Melissa yanked the card back, tried another, declined again. Jason stood silently behind her, Max squirming in the cart seat. People began to stare. "Why is this happening?" she snapped at Jason. "Did you freeze everything just to humiliate me?" "Melissa," he warned quietly, "please." "I have a brand," she shouted, eyes darting. "I have partnerships. This isn't me. This is your mother's fault. She's sabotaging us from the inside like some geriatric Bond villain." A teenage girl 2 lanes over began filming on her phone. Melissa didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care anymore. By the time they got to the car, Jason said nothing. Max had started to cry. Melissa sat behind the wheel and slammed her palms against the steering wheel. "I'm not going down like this," she muttered. Jason closed his eyes, and for the first time he didn't offer comfort. That evening, a courier arrived at the front door, holding an envelope from Doris's attorney. Melissa opened it with trembling hands. Jason watched from the staircase. Inside, amendment notice to Green Trust. Clause 14C. Subject: disqualification of Melissa Green. Effective immediately. No future financial disbursements, claims, or residual inheritance shall be issued to the above party. Melissa read it twice, then crumpled it, then screamed. Doris, sitting in the garden with Oscar at her feet, heard it through the kitchen window. She didn't move. Her tea had just reached the perfect temperature. Melissa used to glide across the marble tiles like a lifestyle commercial in motion. The kitchen was her kingdom, a curated space where every drawer, every tray, every custom-labeled jar spoke of taste, control, and sponsored content. Now the floor felt cold, unwelcoming, the air thick with the scent of something sour, maybe last night's wine still sitting uncorked on the counter, or maybe the rot of power gone stale. The screen on her phone lit up with another notification. Payment declined. Card frozen due to third-party restriction. Melissa let the device fall flat onto the quartz island, letting the clang echo through the kitchen. What else did she cut? She muttered aloud. Jason entered from the hallway, laundry basket in hand. The trust attorney made it clear, everything connected to joint household spending that isn't directly for Max is paused until further notice. Melissa spun. We have a child. That is household spending. Jason set the basket down, exhausted. You spent $280 last week on a spa facial called Awaken the Third Eye. How was that for Max? Melissa's nostrils flared. That was for stress. Stress your mother is causing. She warned us. You kept pushing. Melissa threw a dish towel across the room. She's not even technically part of this house anymore. Jason cut her off. She owns 49%, Melissa. The silence afterward was louder than the slap of the towel hitting the backsplash. The fight started small, over who forgot to buy bread, over why the gas tank was below half, over whether Max needed organic Lunchables or just the regular kind. But soon, they escalated. Max's preschool auto payment bounced. Melissa blamed Jason. Jason blamed Melissa's blocked card. Melissa demanded he co-sign a new one. No, Jason said, for the first time in a voice that didn't wobble. I'm not signing anything else tied to you. She blinked as if slapped. So what now? She asked. We live like peasants while your mother plays puppet master with our accounts? She's not playing anything, he said. She's protecting what she built. Melissa tried a new tactic. The tears. She posted a reel with Max in her lap, her voice soft and wounded. We're just a young family trying to navigate betrayal. Sometimes the people closest to you hurt you the most. She didn't name Doris. She didn't have to. But the comments didn't align like they used to. Instead of comfort, she got pushback. Is this the same MIL you called a parasite? Girl, take accountability. Doris deserves her own documentary. The reel quietly tanked. She deleted it by morning. Then came the delivery day, or rather, the non-delivery. Melissa stood in the driveway with her phone in hand, checking the tracking number for the high-end patio furniture set she'd pre-ordered months ago, back when her sponsorships were flowing and Doris's trust card was open like a faucet. A box truck pulled up. Relief washed over her, until two men stepped out, clipboard in hand. Ma'am, one said, we're here for a return, not a drop-off. Your payment failed twice. The vendor has canceled your account. These items were never cleared. No, she said, lips trembling. That's a mistake. But they were already unstrapping the boxes from the truck. Melissa stood there, arms folded, face burning as neighbors peeked out from windows. That night, Jason moved into the guest room. He didn't offer an explanation, just walked down the hallway with a pillow, a charger, and silence. Melissa didn't stop him. She sat in the dark kitchen, clutching her wine glass, staring at the cold oven like it had betrayed her, too. 2 mornings later, the doorbell rang. Melissa opened it wearing sweatpants and a silk top, a blur of confusion and mood swings. A courier stood there with a manila envelope. Melissa Green? He asked. Yes, she said, guarded. You've been served. Temporary restraining order. Issued on behalf of the Bennett Fiduciary Group. He handed her the envelope. Signed for. What? Why? Harassment of a trust manager. Unlawful threats via email and phone. Melissa tore open the document, scanning the words through a wave of nausea. It was real. It was enforceable. It had Doris's name written all over it. The invite list used to be automatic. Melissa never had to ask twice to host a book club night or be tagged in the latest Mom's Group wine tasting event. Her Instagram stories were filled with smiling women in leggings and straw hats, clinking glasses over charcuterie, tagging her kitchen as a vibe. But this month, the HOA block party flyer didn't show up in her mailbox. When she emailed Marlene from the activities committee, the response was clipped. "We're focusing on members who foster inclusive environments. Thanks for understanding." Melissa threw her phone across the couch. It landed face down, silent. At the next farmer's market, Doris stood near the herb seedlings, chatting with the local librarian about starting a Reading Roots mentorship for struggling kids. Her reusable bag was filled with beets, basil, and compliments. Always so generous. One neighbor whispered to another as Doris passed. She never made a fuss, just handled it. She gave them the down payment, you know. That whole house started with her. Doris didn't stop walking. But she heard it all. She no longer needed vindication. The community gave it to her anyway, quiet, steady, and unasked for. Meanwhile, Melissa couldn't get a coffee without side eyes. Someone from the old gym group had unfollowed her, then posted a vague quote, "People show their true colors when the money runs out." She had no idea how fast her circle would evaporate once the perks dried up. Jason noticed, too, more than he admitted. He came home one afternoon to find Max in his room, coloring with markers on the walls. "Max, bud, what are you doing?" Jason asked, kneeling beside him. Max looked up. "It's my quiet house, like Grandma's." Jason blinked. "Why quiet?" "Because Mommy yells more now." Jason's stomach dropped. "What does she yell about?" "Money and Grandma, and why the food is boring now." Jason didn't know whether to cry or apologize. He just held his son tighter. Melissa spent most afternoons scrolling TikTok and checking the view counts on her past sponsored posts. They'd stopped climbing, just like her influence, just like her friends. Even her old brand partners didn't return emails. Her world had become smaller, shrinking with every click, every ignored DM. At night, Doris watered her garden. Max helped sometimes, gently pressing seeds into the soft soil. Doris showed him how to clip basil stems and taught him the names of flowers: marigold, salvia, snapdragon. He asked if snapdragons really snapped. Doris smiled and let one brush against his nose. They laughed together. Melissa watched from the upstairs window, arms folded. That laughter used to be hers to script. Doris didn't gloat, she didn't grandstand, she grew. She began mentoring at the community center, teaching young women how to navigate scholarships, budget their first paychecks, and understand the basics of estate planning. "Never let anyone treat your kindness like a loophole," she'd tell them. "Generosity is not submission." Her name began circulating not just as Jason's mother or Max's grandmother, but as a leader, an anchor. Late one night, Jason sat at the kitchen table, going through old emails on the shared laptop. He wasn't sure what he was looking for: a thread, a sign, an escape hatch. Then he clicked into Melissa's inbox by accident. The subject line stared at him, unread and bold. "Divorce? Pre-filing confirmation. Green, Melissa." Dated 2 weeks ago, filed under her private Gmail alias, drafted, signed, and already stamped with a hearing date. Jason stared at the screen, jaw clenched. His name was in the paperwork, but not her heart. The final kicker? The line under reason for filing was chilling in its pettiness. Unresolvable financial trauma due to external interference. Melissa slid open the top drawer and stared at the void where the polished flatware used to gleam. The organizers remained, clean, compartmentalized, and useless. She had sold the cutlery 2 nights ago on a luxury resale group under an anonymous alias. Vintage matte gold set, rare, gently loved. Venmo only. It fetched $180, enough for groceries, gas, and a bottle of rosé she drank alone before noon. Now she used plastic forks and pretended it was a choice. Her spa membership had been canceled without warning. The front desk girl had offered a too sweet smile. "Sorry, Mrs. Green. The card on file didn't go through again." Melissa had walked out with her chin high and her cheeks burning. On the way home, she checked her bank app. 0 available credit. Even her backup card was frozen pending authorization conflicts. She listed her designer shoes next, then the coats, then the Le Creuset she once displayed on camera like a symbol of domestic goddesshood. Now even Max's toy bin looked less full. Jason noticed the shifts, but he said little. One morning, he found her crouched over a duffel bag, stuffing clothes with tags still on into a USPS box. "For donations," she muttered. He didn't ask questions. But later, he saw the shipping label, the Lux Reboot, payout account ending in 83. He shut the door quietly. That night, as Max dozed in his car seat after piano class, Jason asked Doris the question he'd been avoiding for weeks. "Would you ever consider reactivating the trust?" His voice was low, heavy with defeat. "Just part of it? For Max, maybe?" Doris didn't look away from the road. Her hands were steady on the wheel. "Jason," she said, "you stood by while she cut me out of birthday parties, doctor visits, and my own investment. You watched her mock me in my own home, and you called it peace." Jason's shoulders slumped. "I'm not angry," Doris continued, "but I'm not rescuing the woman who tried to bury me alive in polite cruelty." "What about Max?" he asked softly. Doris turned to look at him for a moment. Her eyes were gentle. "He's already in the trust. I saw to that long ago." Max thrived in Doris's world. He picked out books at the library with dramatic flair. He watered the basil in her window box like it was treasure. He sat through piano lessons with more discipline than Jason expected, and afterward, he asked Doris if music lived inside his hands. She told him yes, and he believed her. They'd built something quiet and real. Melissa had built spectacle, and now spectacle had left her with shadows. One night, Jason found Melissa crying in the kitchen. She was sitting on the floor, wrapped in her once-favorite silk robe, sobbing with her knees pulled to her chest. "There's nothing left," she whispered. He sat down beside her, but didn't reach out. "I don't know who we are anymore," he said. She looked at him with puffy eyes. "I was just trying to give us a future." "No," he said. "You were trying to take a shortcut." She didn't reply, but she didn't deny it either. A week later, Doris received a text from an unknown number. No greeting, no name, just a screenshot of a legal inquiry. The top read, "Petition for conservatorship, Green Doris, alleged cognitive decline." The sender followed with one line, "Thought you should know. She's moving fast." Doris stared at the screen in the garden light. Her breath caught not in fear, but in recognition. Melissa wasn't giving up, she was going lower. Doris reached for her phone, her fingers calm but firm. The summons arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under Doris's door in a plain envelope with a polite knock and a hurried retreat. She unfolded it slowly. The courtroom address, the docket number, and the bold, unforgiving words. Petition for conservatorship. Green, Doris. Petitioner, Melissa Green. Her tea steeped untouched beside her. Outside, Oscar barked at a squirrel the same way he always did. But inside, something sharpened. They weren't just trying to silence her now. They wanted her declared unfit. She picked up her phone and dialed her attorney, Marlene Kim. "No more chess," Doris said calmly. "Let's play poker. All in." By Friday, Melissa's strategy was already unraveling. She filed her claim citing suspicious behavior, memory issues, and financial inconsistency. As proof, she submitted 2 voice memos Doris had made, edited, stitched together, and taken grossly out of context. One clip had Doris stumbling on a word mid-sentence. Another had her pausing for 10 seconds before answering a rhetorical question in her journal entry. "Cognitive decline," Melissa's attorney argued, "can present subtly at first. What we have here is evidence of early confusion and inconsistent financial choices. It is in young Max's best interest and the family's to ensure Mrs. Green's estate is responsibly managed." Doris sat silent in her gray suit, back straight, her video journal drive resting in her lap. The judge turned to her side of the courtroom. "Defense, your rebuttal?" Marlene rose, her tone as sharp as the cut of her blazer. We submit a full video archive, over 3 hours of unedited footage spanning 3 months. Each entry includes a timestamp, topic breakdown, and active demonstration of Mrs. Green's cognitive clarity. She hit play. The screen lit up with Doris's calm, steady face. She recited headlines, described books she'd read, quoted dates and times, explained clauses in her will, cross-referenced trust language. In one entry, she solved a Sudoku puzzle on camera while reciting Max's school pickup schedule from memory. The courtroom was silent, except for the clicking of Melissa's heel, tapping the floor like a nervous tell. The judge nodded slowly. Petitioner's evidence appears to have been edited, substantially. Melissa's lawyer stammered, "We believed, our client was told." "Was she told, or did she tell?" The judge cut in, tone cool and unimpressed. Melissa's face flushed crimson. Doris didn't look at her. She never did. The judge sighed. "The court dismisses the petition for conservatorship, immediately. If future false claims are filed, sanctions will be considered." Then he turned to Doris. "Mrs. Green, would you like to make a statement?" Doris stood. "No, Your Honor, but I will be filing a countersuit, emotional manipulation, digital slander, harassment." Melissa's eyes darted to Jason. He hadn't moved from the second row. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just sat silently, behind Doris. The countersuit landed that afternoon, along with over 24 character letters from the community, from the youth center, from Max's piano teacher, from the public library staff, all in support of Doris, all handwritten. "She teaches us how to read, how to save, and how to believe in our futures." Layla S., age 14. "Doris is sharp, and sharper than the people trying to smear her." Amy J., HOA vice president. "She brought her grandson to class early just to help clean the instruments." Mr. Levin, music teacher. Even the judge looked stunned at the volume. "You have more community backing than most public officials I've seen in family court," he said. Doris only replied, "That's because I didn't buy their loyalty. I earned their trust." The final blow came swiftly. After reviewing the filing history, the court suspended Melissa's visitation rights to Max, citing coercive behavior, instability, and abuse of legal process. She would now require a supervised visitation officer to be present, if Jason approved visits at all. Melissa broke down in the corridor. "No, no, no," she whispered, gripping the wall like it might stop the collapse. "He's my son." Jason passed her without slowing. Doris walked beside him, Oscar's leash looped in her hand. Calm, upright. Melissa called after them. "You can't keep him from me." Doris paused at the exit door. "I'm not," she said. "The court is." Melissa stood in the center of the kitchen like she was being evicted from her own identity. Gone was the ring light setup she used to film cooking reels. Gone were the curated spice jars, the matching rose gold measuring cups, the aesthetic air fryer that had never once cooked for more than views. Only the marble counters remained, silent, cold, unblinking. She ran her fingers along the edge of the island, digging her nail into a hairline scratch she once swore didn't exist. Now it was all she could see. "Where's the tray with the etched glasses?" she asked, spinning toward Jason. He was upstairs folding Max's clothes into a neutral-colored duffel bag. "Gone?" he called down. "You sold it 2 weeks ago, remember?" She blinked. "Right. Payout, $92.54 after shipping." Outside, Doris's attorney directed the moving crew toward the front entrance, speaking calmly but firmly. "Main items in the primary bedroom. The toddler's items stay with the father. Leave the piano. It belongs to the estate trust." Melissa hissed from the doorway. "She's doing this to humiliate me." "No," came Doris's voice from behind her, calm as dusk. "I'm doing this because the contract allows it." Melissa spun around. Doris was dressed in gray slacks, white blouse, and her wedding ring, still gleaming like quiet armor. She stepped into the kitchen without hesitation, the click of her shoes gentle but definitive. "You can't throw me out," Melissa snapped, voice rising. "This was my home." Doris opened the legal folder she carried and handed Melissa a single page. Co-occupant. V. Clause, Section 11C. Any resident determined by court to be in breach of fiduciary, emotional, or trust-related obligations may be asked to vacate shared property within 10 days. Melissa's hands shook as she read. "You wrote this clause," Doris said softly. "You just never imagined it could be used against you." Jason entered behind them, Max clinging to his pant leg. He knelt beside the boy, brushing hair from his eyes. "Grandma helped us fix this," he said. "We're going to start fresh somewhere new, okay?" Max looked at Melissa, then at Doris. "Will Mommy come with us?" Jason hesitated. Doris crouched down and answered gently. "She needs to take a little break, honey. Grown-ups need time out sometimes, too." Melissa's face contorted with rage. "You're poisoning him against me." Doris stood. "Number. I'm just letting the silence speak now." Later that afternoon, as the final box was taped shut, Melissa yanked open a cabinet in a last fit of defiance, and the right door snapped clean off its hinge. "Damn it!" she shouted, slamming it onto the floor. "You broke it," Jason said flatly. "She set me up," Melissa snapped, pointing at Doris. "She made me look crazy. You're all falling for her victim act." Doris walked into the kitchen slowly. She picked up the cabinet door and leaned it against the pantry. Then she took out her phone and snapped a photo. Not to post, not to prove, but to remember. She placed a hand on the marble and whispered just loud enough for Melissa to hear. "Emotional support doesn't look like this." Melissa didn't respond. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was sputtering control, finally dying. Doris walked out without looking back. By dusk, the front yard was still. The smell of lemon oil lingered in the air, remnants of the cleaner Doris had used to wipe the counters one last time. Oscar trotted around the yard, sniffing the base of the mailbox like it, too, was reclaiming its place. Then came the thunk-thunk-thunk of metal-piercing soil. A man in jeans drove a wooden post into the lawn and fastened the rectangular sign, "For sale. Green and Associates Realty Cash Buyers Only. No contingencies." The house hit the market on a Thursday. By Sunday, it was under contract. No open house, no online tours, no time for second guesses. Doris had instructed her realtor to prioritize one thing: speed, cash only, no emotional buyers, no "this is our dream home" couples. She didn't want her history romanticized. She wanted it transferred, clean and irreversible. The offer came from a retired couple out of San Luis Obispo, freshly out of a downsized life and looking for charm and marble. Doris smiled when she saw their names. "Janet and Carla," she whispered. "It's in better hands now." Melissa found out through the grapevine, or more specifically, the neighborhood Facebook group. She wasn't tagged. She wasn't warned. She showed up at Jason's apartment 3 hours later, red-faced and shaking. "She can't just sell it," Melissa snapped. "We lived there. That house was ours." Jason stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You lived there. I survived there." "She's erasing everything. She's finalizing everything. There's a difference." Melissa's voice cracked. "You have to stop this." Jason shook his head. "It's not mine to stop anymore." He closed the door before she could speak again. Doris's new condo was quiet and sun-drenched, nestled in a tree-lined cul-de-sac just 2 miles from where the house used to stand. The windows overlooked a small lake where ducks paddled like clockwork. The smell of fresh paint and leather-bound books filled the living space. Her favorite chair was positioned under a tall lamp near the built-in shelves, her library nook. The only framed photo on the mantel was of Max, holding a sunflower taller than himself, grinning with 3 missing teeth. She'd won partial custody in mediation, weekends and school breaks. Jason hadn't fought her. In fact, he asked for it. He said Max needed a tether to somewhere calm. Doris simply replied, "Then I'll be that." Jason began therapy 2 weeks after the court ruling. The first session felt like confession, not counseling. "I watched her belittle my mom for years," he told the therapist. "I thought being neutral meant being fair, but it just made me complicit." He left each appointment lighter. He started showing up for Max's piano lessons again, sat in the second row, took notes, even clapped on the offbeat just to make Max giggle. Doris noticed but didn't comment. Growth, she had learned, didn't need applause. On recital day, Max wore a little blue blazer and sat with legs swinging over the bench, his hands poised on the keys. He played Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with more feeling than skill, but the moment was golden, until Melissa showed up. She slipped in through the side doors, wearing sunglasses and a high-collared coat as if disguising herself from shame. She stood at the back, taking out her phone to Ilum, until the head of the music program walked over and gently tapped her arm. "I'm sorry, but your visitation privileges are restricted," she said. "We'll have to ask you to leave." "You're embarrassing me," Melissa hissed. The teacher didn't flinch. "No, ma'am, I'm enforcing a court order." Melissa's protest died in her throat when she realized all the parents had gone silent. Even Max glanced up, confused by the sudden tension. Doris met Melissa's eyes across the room and didn't blink. Melissa turned and left. Not a word, not a glance back. The recital ended with cupcakes and juice boxes. Jason helped stack chairs. Max showed off his participation ribbon like it was a Grammy. Doris stood outside her condo that evening, removing bills from her mailbox when she saw it. A white envelope, no stamp, no return address. She opened it. Inside, appeal filed, custody and trust review. Below it, typed in bold, "You haven't won yet." Doris slid the folded document across the cafe table, her hands steady, her eyes unwavering. Jason blinked down at it. "What is this?" "Your original prenup," Doris said softly, stirring her coffee. "The one we drafted after you graduated law school, before you ever met Melissa. You don't remember because you barely read it, just signed it out of convenience, probably on your way to a fantasy football draft." Jason opened it, scanning the first page, his jaw clenched by the third clause. Doris leaned back. "We added a secondary clause after your father passed. It was my idea. For protection. You never thought you'd need it. I prayed you never would." His eyes narrowed. Clause 7b, fraudulent pursuit of inheritance if substantiated by legal or judicial means, nullifies all claims to jointly acquired property and marital earnings. He looked up slowly. "She married into your future, Jason," Doris said, "not your heart." It was the kind of document that shattered delusions. Melissa had filed her appeal assuming the worst was over, that Doris was done fighting, that Max's recital was the last act in a drawn-out play. She didn't know the curtains were only halfway open. Jason walked into court holding the prenup like a blade, calm, focused. When asked if he contested the marriage dissolution terms, he answered clearly, "I'm enforcing Clause 7b." Melissa blinked, confused. "What clause?" "The one you never thought mattered," he said. When her attorney read the line out loud, Melissa's face lost color. "Mr. Green," the judge asked, "can you confirm this clause was entered prior to the marriage?" Jason nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. It's notarized, witnessed, and dated 6 months before the engagement. My mother was the co-author." The courtroom was silent. Then came the gavel, swift and conclusive. "Motion to honor Clause 7b is granted. Mrs. Green, your rights to any shared property or inheritance are formally dissolved." Melissa's lawyer leaned over and whispered, "There's nothing left to fight for." But Melissa didn't move. She just sat there, dazed, like the marble countertops she'd once bragged about were now made of ash. The aftermath unfolded quickly. The appeal collapsed like a card trick exposed in daylight. Doris's mental health was declared fully intact, bolstered by testimony from her therapist, her video journals, and a notarized statement from Max's pediatrician confirming Doris's role in his life was emotionally stable and beneficial. Melissa's name was officially stripped from all financial accounts. Her access revoked not with drama, but with digital efficiency. Jason, meanwhile, filed to transfer the remaining funds from the house sale, roughly $163,000, into a locked educational trust under Max's name. "I can't undo the years," he told Doris quietly, "but I can make sure he's never used like a bargaining chip again." Doris didn't say much. She didn't need to. The courtroom victory was quiet. No applause, no celebration, just dignity, which Melissa had long since bartered away for clout and control. That evening, Doris sat at her desk beside the lakefront window, the surface neatly arranged, a coaster for her tea, a family photo from Max's recital, and a small stack of certified mailing envelopes. She took a pen and addressed the top one, Melissa Green, R.E. Final Trust and Estate Ruling. She slid in the court documents, then added one last page, handwritten, no legal jargon. Melissa, you were never disqualified because you were unkind to me. You were disqualified because you believed entitlement would outlast respect. It didn't. This is not punishment. This is consequence. Doris Green. She sealed the envelope, stamped it with a certified tracking sticker, and slid it into the outgoing tray. Oscar whined softly at her feet. I know, she whispered. It's done. But even as she stood, the wind shifted through the open window, brushing against the pages like an unseen warning. The mornings were hers now, no schedules, no veiled insults, no energy, spent decoding subtext in another woman's smirk. Just Doris, a ceramic mug of cinnamon coffee warming her palms, sunlight kissing the hardwood of her lakefront condo, and Oscar curled beneath her chair like a guardian made of fur and loyalty. She looked out over the water as it shimmered in early spring light, rippling gently with the kind of quiet only peace could buy and protect. On weekends, Max's laughter filled the space. It didn't echo the way it used to in the cold corners of the marble kitchen. It landed here, sank into the quilted couch cushions and the worn rug and the pancake batter on the counter. This place, small but sacred, didn't need grandeur to feel like home. It needed love, and it had that in spades. A few miles away, Melissa sat on the floor of her shared apartment, scrolling her dwindling follower count. Her latest post, a teary-eyed monologue about resilience and bounce back, had barely cracked 300 likes. The comments were worse than the silence. Girl, sit down. You got outplayed. This isn't healing. It's deflection. You used a child as leverage. We saw the court documents. Her ring light flickered from a loose socket. Her voice shook on camera. And her brand? It had become a cautionary tale. Melissa Green, once a queen of curated aesthetics, was now a meme shared in whispers, #, Bioweapon backlash. She clicked post on one last reel, then closed the app and stared at her reflection in the dark screen. No filters, no redemption arc, just her. Doris didn't celebrate revenge. She didn't need to. Instead, she wrote. The manuscript had started as a letter to Max. Something small, something to explain everything he might one day ask. But as she wrote, it grew into something more. A story of a little boy who moved through houses but never lost his roots because his grandmother taught him that walls don't matter, hearts do. She titled it, A House is Just a Place, but Love is a Legacy. When the publisher accepted it, they asked for a dedication page. She wrote, For Max, who reminded me that silence isn't surrender. It's the beginning of wisdom. She donated the advance to a nonprofit supporting grandparents raising grandchildren. The director cried. Doris just smiled. On her 72nd birthday, Jason knocked on her door holding a bouquet of sunflowers, her late husband's favorite flower. I was going to send a card, he said, shifting awkwardly, but Max insisted we bring cookies. Max popped out from behind his legs, holding a tin, eyes wide and proud. Doris stepped aside. Come in, both of you. They sat around the small dining table. Doris had set 3 plates, 1 candle, and a pitcher of lemonade. Jason watched her for a long moment as Max nibbled a sugar cookie. You're stronger than I ever understood, he said finally. Doris looked at him, her gaze warm but steady. No, Jason. I'm just done apologizing for not being what someone else wanted me to be. They clinked glasses. No toasts. Just a shared silence that meant something now. That night, when Max had been tucked into bed and Jason left to get gas, Doris reached into her side drawer and pulled out the printed copy of the TikTok that started it all. She's not a grandmother. She's a bioweapon of guilt. The caption, the likes, the venom. She tossed it into the fireplace and struck a match. The flame caught instantly, curling the page into ash. Doris watched, her lips neither smiling nor bitter. Just done. The next morning, Max climbed onto the armchair beside her, cradling a warm mug of milk in both hands. His hair stuck up in 3 directions, and he was still wearing mismatched socks from last night. He looked at her as if trying to measure a question bigger than he knew how to phrase. Then he asked quietly, "Grandma, when I grow up, can I be like you?" Doris felt the tears slip free before she could stop it. She put her arm around him and whispered, "You already are, sweetheart. You already are."